Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where we explore ways to get healthy, wealthy, and wise. With a combination of guest interviews and solo episodes, I hope you will be inspired and motivated to become the best of whatever you are. I'm Elle Russ, #1 best-selling author and subject expert with over a decade of helping thousands of people across the globe. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about free guides, masterclasses, online courses, and more. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone. All right, today we have a special guest, and you heard her husband and son come on the show from Kantor Kantor law firm and talk about the ins and outs of disability coverage, health claims coverage, but there's another whole section to this that can be extra tricky. It's one thing to get a physical disability or a physical claim approved and fight a denial, but it's another thing to get anything within the realm of mental health. So Lisa Kantor is joining us today. She's an attorney, also with the same law firm that she started with her husband. And we're going to talk to her about all the ins and outs so that you know what you might be up against or the help you might need in case you're going through something like this. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us how, you started this law firm, and then as you got further, you started to have sort of mental health claim situations that led you in this direction. Tell us how that got ignited.
Sure. So, Glenn and I started the law firm and, we're helping people with disability challenges. And I came across a case by a young girl who had just gone to college, and her mom called me and said, she came back home and she had developed an eating disorder, and we tried to get her treatment. And, we're just running against all these roadblocks. We took a loan against our house. We put her in a facility, cost us a lot of money. Can you help me? And I thought, well, this sounds really interesting. And since this is kind of what we do, we filed a lawsuit, and we lost. We lost at the federal district court level, which I was very, very upset about. So we took it up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And um, I remember walking in that day to this argument. I've done many, many of these arguments before, and they're always very formal and very legal. And I walked in, and the first question I got was, how is she? Is she alive? And I thought, okay, I got him now. And I was able to talk to them about how, here's a girl who she does everything right. She gets her physical, she goes to college, and she gets sick and she comes home, and her insurance company had nothing to offer her. You can't have another physical because you just had one. And, maybe we'll send you to group therapy. And, she was literally dying. And if the parents hadn't had the wherewithal to borrow money, I don't know that she'd be with us. And so I was able to walk them through that, and they reversed, and we got a judgment in our favor, and the people got their money back. But then I was hooked. I was like,
So
what is
you
going
won
on?
on appeal then as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, we took it to the Federal Court of Appeals.
Tell me what people are not legal experts
Yeah.
necessarily into this, but give us a little bit of a taste of what the argument, like how and what basis did they deny it? And then what basis did the judge on the appeal go, no, 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 they got it wrong? What were their arguments that later were overturned?
So, the argument that most of your viewers are always going to run into is medical necessity. Every insurance policy is supposed to cover what is medically necessary. So, when you break your arm and there's an x-ray and people can look at it, they know, oh, you need a cast. Not a lot of people are going to argue. Mental health is tricky. It requires an expert to understand what you're going through and to figure out what you really need. And on the other side of it, the insurance companies hire their own doctors, and they may have the right credentials. They may be a psychiatrist, but maybe they've never seen someone with an eating disorder. And they look at your records, they never talk to you, and they say, oh, I think Lisa she could have just gone to therapy and she would be all right. And your doctor is saying, oh no, you really need to have 24-hour care. We need to watch you. We need to make sure you're getting enough nutrition. So it's this disagreement about medical necessity that drives a lot of these denials.
And I guess each person with an eating disorder, let's say, just talking about this particular mental health issue, there might be some people where therapy would just be all that was recommended, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The challenge that people face is when you go to a doctor and you find a doctor you trust and the doctor says this is what you need and you say, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And then your insurance company says, "No, that's not what you need. You need something else." Well, that's very confusing. Um, and I ran into a lot of parents, especially in the beginning, who were really confused because my insurance company is telling me my child doesn't need this, but my provider is saying, yes, she does. And I certainly don't want her to die, but I don't have the money to pay for this. So it's very challenging.
So it's your doc's word against the
Mhm.
insurance company. Then at that point, I guess it would be the mountain of evidence, right? As many experts as you can get to say that this is what you need would be the best of what you can offer. But I'm assuming you can also just argue it without that. Uh,
Well, here's what I like to argue when I argue these cases. We should be trusting our medical professionals who actually see the patient to design the treatment. It's not fair to get some doctor who may not even be in your state, who may not understand your diagnosis, to look at your records, not speak with you, not know you, and decide you need something else.
right.
Um,
And
that's
yeah, and I explained that when I was on the podcast with Glenn and Andrew.
Mhm.
My personal experience with long-term disability too, and having them, they told us about the whole, and everyone can go back to that episode to take a look, but basically it's I got a letter once and it was like, "Hi, we have a doctor who's never met you here who looked at the paperwork, and we have this other person who's a vocational rehabilitation specialist who looked at your paperwork, and they both said, 'You're not disabled at all. So therefore, goodbye.'" And that's what they did, and of course, I had to go through the appeal and I won and etcetera, but that right there, it's such crazy mental gymnastic gaslighting because you're like, "You've never even freaking met me. You
Right.
haven't even touched my wrist. You haven't talked to me. You have done nothing but just rubber stamp a denial, and it's insane, but that's what they do, like, the person has never met you. So,
Yeah.
I guess this is always argued, and in my I guess I ask myself and would ask you, like, at what point can they just stop I mean, do you know what I mean? It's almost like
Yeah.
that should be prohibited, that they are allowed to submit medical evidence at all in favor of themselves, the insurance companies, without that doctor seeing you. When's that gonna happen? It seems like it should, no, or am I wrong?
Y You know what? We've been advocating for this on both sides. I mean, we talk ourselves blue in the face every time we get in front of a judge, every time we get in front of a legislator. Why is this the way our system is? It makes no sense. And imagine that your primary diagnosis is a mental disability, so you're already really struggling to just get out of bed in the morning, and with an
And they're
eating.
causing they're making it
Yes,
worse.
yes. And so with an eating disorder in particular, um, I had a lot of clients who would grab onto this. Oh, you see, my insurance company says I'm okay. I don't need treatment. And it really destroys and messes with their recovery. One of the things we do, and I don't know if this happened to you in disability in the health side, we're always talking about what's the standards. Like as I said, you break your arm, you get a cast.
That's right.
But for mental illness, what is the standard? Who should we be looking to tell us what people need and when they need it? I mean,
Yeah,
I look.
who are those experts? Because in my
Yeah,
world, with a hand disability, it would be an upper extremity specialist who's a hand surgeon, right? That's your ultimate. So who's your ultimate with this?
yeah. So I like to look to the American Psychiatric Association or the American Psychological Association, and I pour through all their documents and see if I can find some guidance. But what insurance companies do is they make their own rules up. I was once in trial about a girl who needed residential treatment, and the insurance company put up a witness who said, you have to go through 17 hoops to get residential treatment. And if you have, and these are his words, not mine, a normal dysfunctional family at home
Oh,
who can watch you in the evenings, you don't get it because it's their job to make sure you eat and don't self-harm. I mean,
so wait, so
wow.
that's just out of thin air making up
Yeah,
like this. So essentially, it was a quote expert they hired to be on the
yeah.
stand who says too many hoops to go through this thing, so not worth it, not possible. I'm just trying to understand their point.
This was their internal doctor, and they created their own written guidelines, and
Oh,
it literally had 17 things you had to do to qualify for them to pay for residential treatment. And
that's
it,
really just making up your own medical
yes,
rule about a
yeah,
condition at your own insurance. That would be me, just lross.com. I'm going to start making up rules about
exactly.
that's okay. I mean, I'm sorry to laugh, but like some of the stories, I'm sure you've got ones too we're gonna roll our eyes at, but that Glenn and Andrew told, or even my own, it's like, and I do want to just say this on one note, which is I don't to this day, but back in the day, in like 1998 or something, when I had gone on disability and they first started to surveil me, when I found out I was being followed I was in downtown Chicago and I found out, like, I realized I was actively being followed in the moment. So here's the
Mm,
thing. I laugh about it because I grew up in downtown Chicago. So if you know anything about downtown Chicago, there are lots of alleyways, escape routes. Like there's lots of, if you know the city, you can get away from somebody, do you know what I mean, who doesn't know it. And so this guy is following me and I'm like, I was literally like in a movie where I'm switching from bus to train. I'm going down this alleyway. I'm trying to lose him. I
mm,
got home and I had the first panic attack I've ever had in my entire life.
yeah,
Didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't need drug intervention for it, but I had recognized it later as being like, oh, that's what it was. And
yeah,
that was so horrific. And mine was not a mental, emotional
right,
ability. So this stuff is so hard because they harass you. I've had them verbally harass me. I can't even imagine. I bet there's an insurance company that has said to the claimant, just eat, just
right.
fucking eat.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Those are the kinds of silly things they say.
Yeah.
Or, it's like you can't win. If you even get into a residential facility and you start eating, then they want to kick you out. If you don't eat, then they
Oh,
say
she's
you're
been
not
eating for 3
compliant.
days. She's fine now. She's
Yeah,
fixed.
right. I mean, there's no way to win. Um,
How
you
do
know,
we by the way, how do we just we'll get into the details in a minute, but just because 'cause we're
yeah,
on it, our mind is here, let's just cut over to, like, the fact that everyone's listening to this and probably going, an insurance company should not allow their own doctor to make up a specific rule about what and who needs, getting into a residential facility.
right.
What changes that? Is that a law passed by Congress? Is that a local law? Is that a California state? How does that get changed? Because I'm assuming that could it be? And I'm assuming if it did, it would help you and every other claimant.
Right. So, the only way that I've seen change in this area is by different lawsuits and litigation. And we had a really good case in California, and it's still winding its way through the appeal system. But basically, one of the district court federal judges said you have to use recognized guidelines from
There
a
you
recognized organization like the American Psychiatric Association or the American Psychological Association, or someone who's independent, who doesn't, their game isn't getting treatment or not. It's just this is how you get the diagnosis. This is how you treat it at different levels of severity. That's how we have to do it, unfortunately. It's not a federal issue. And I don't even know we could get it done at the state issue. It's sort of judge-made law that
okay.
we,
So then it's just through compelling lawsuits over time and the
yes,
repetitive nature of these outcomes.
yeah,
Uh, God, this fires me up, and I know you guys
yeah,
about it too because it's almost like it's raising my blood pressure right now thinking about what I have had to go through it. I have shed so many tears over
mm,
many, many years, so I understand and I can only imagine that in and of itself is depressing. Okay.
right.
And I'm a happy person. I'm one of the happiest motherfuckers I know. But that is such a downer. You are in the depths. It is just a level of harassment, like intentional infliction of emotional distress, which
Right.
a remedy if you are not under ERISA, and everyone can
Right.
go back to the Glenn and Andrew episode to get a refresher on that. All right, so that's crazy. Let's get into, well, we already got into a few tactics. I would love to
Right.
hear some of the most ridiculous scenarios that you have seen that really were like, wow, they actually did that.
Yeah. So I can tell you about one case that was I litigated in Utah, believe it or not. And ended up winning the case, but this was a young woman who was in residential treatment, and they wanted to drop her down to day treatment, which, day treatment ends around 5 o'clock, and you have that whole evening where you're not supervised. And they kept saying, she can take care of herself in the evening. There's no reason why she can't. Well, so the facility said, okay, let's give this a try. So they sent her out for an hour with her parents in the car. She was young, she was a minor. Within half an hour of getting in the car, she took the seatbelt and tried to strangle herself. And they had to, call 911. And the insurance company still wouldn't pay for her to be in 24-hour care. We
As
had,
after she actively just tried to kill herself.
right, right.
What would just want to hear what was their argument from their side? What was the oh no, we don't think she needs it, even though she
Um,
tried to kill herself, or did they just say that and make you do what you got to do to prove it because that's kind of seemingly also a tactic.
they belittle it. They belittle her as a person. She wasn't really trying to commit suicide. She was just looking for attention.
Oh
Get
boy.
that a lot. Um,
Gotta hurt
I mean,
really hard for the parents and the people who are
yeah,
truly suffering to hear that. That's again, that's sort of like this projected shame.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really tough. I've had more clients than I want to think about who have been discharged and gone home and passed away in their beds. This is particularly a problem with bulimia because
Mm.
bulimia, people don't realize how much it affects the heart, and a lot of bulimic patients are not underweight. And so a lot of times the insurance company will say, well, if you're at 75% of your ideal weight, you can go home and do the rest by yourself. Could you imagine telling a cancer patient, we've got 75% of your margins. Now you go home and heal yourself.
Yeah.
How could you ever say that to a cancer patient? But they say it to the mentally ill all the time. We've gotten you 75% there. Go home and work on it by yourself. And I've had patients like that go home and die in their sleep.
You
Uh,
know, you brought up a very important point about bulimia, and I would like to
mhm.
share. People my age and older will remember this, but if you are not our age, then go look it up because the whole right to life death situation with Terry Schiavo back in the 80s was because she was a bulimic.
Mm,
That whole thing of her getting into a coma or whatever, brain dead, whatever the event was, she had a heart attack, then went brain dead, I forget, then fought
right.
family for 10 years, the husband to try to, release her from life. And that was because she was a bulimic. And
Mm,
that might have been one of the first public indicators about what you just said, which is how it
right,
affects the heart. So I want everyone to go back and take a look at that if you're not aware, because that case is very interesting. But in general, it really stemmed that whole thing from bulimia.
right,
And so I
right.
can see someone being, I don't know if she was skinny at the time then or bulimia reflected, but you're right. Often people think of someone with a eating disorder as someone who's really ultra thin and skinny, where you can claim anorexia, but bulimia sometimes not. And so it could still be like the quote silent killer, right?
Mm,
I can see how, these shady insurance companies would be like, well, they look fine to me. Their BMI was great. Or
right.
whatever. Yeah. Just wanted to edge that in there real quick because it's an important point.
Yeah, no, it's a very important point. And bulimics they do struggle more than anorexics do to get treatment, but it's all very weight based, which should not be the focus, and nevertheless, it is. Um, they
Because it's
also,
not really a physical problem, though, is it? That's what we're saying, right? It's categorized, well, it can be, but it's a mental thing that then can affect physical, and they're trying to make it a physical problem.
Well, they're trying to make it a choice. And
Right.
none of these diseases are choices. They are diseases. There's lots of good studies that show that an anorexic and bulimic brain is different than those who are non-anorexic or bulimic. There are changes in the brain, and it is a disease, not a choice. And so many times we get, as you said, eat more, or we'll get pressure on the provider, refeed them faster, which is so dangerous. I mean, if you remember the stories coming out of the Holocaust where they started feeding these people too quickly, and a lot of them died because of that. You can't refeed that quickly. So you have to do it, in a very intentional way.
Well, no, no one's ever been like, "Hey, break a fast with, meatloaf." You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
right,
right,
exactly.
so I get that.
No.
Okay, tell us,
Mm.
okay, people who might be themselves or have a family member, they're going through this, where they will need to, where maybe someone's in early stages of therapy, and not to be the downer and say, "Oh, it's all gonna go to hell. You better, uh, get all the warnings in." But what do people need to think about in either choosing a provider? Obviously, you don't wanna go to the company doctor who's a psychiatrist,
Right.
assuming, okay? You go get your own. Do you need to look into beforehand whether or not the psychiatrist somehow out there is in favor of claimants legally? Like, it's that a thing?
I find that there's a clear division. You either work for an insurance company or you treat. And that's part of my complaint
Right.
is that people who work for the insurance companies don't treat. They just look at paper. But
Right.
you've raised another problem that we have in our country, which is that we do not have a lot of mental health providers who are what we call in network with health insurance companies because the health insurance companies don't pay enough. And so oftentimes the people who are qualified and especially in this kind of specialty are out of network, which means you're going to pay. And if you don't have the means to do that, it really causes a problem.
Mm,
It creates this system where people of means who can pay for private therapy, who can pay for residential treatment, may get the right care, but normal everyday people, they really struggle to find the right place and to find the right people. And it's really frightening. The other thing is, if you're alone, if you really need someone to advocate for you because you need to be just trying to get better. And if you're also filling out insurance forms and trying to identify providers, it's overwhelming. It's completely overwhelming. So that wasn't a very bright and sunny
but
advice
this
to people.
no, this is real talk though, because this is
Yeah,
so yeah, give us some of the things people need to have in terms of the T's
yeah.
crossed or what they need to kind of, because there's some things I have a friend who is 35 years old and actually just recently became permanently disabled with the similar hand issue that I have, like,
Mm,
repetitive strain injury. And I mean, immediately he had an amateur attorney available for, I was like, "Oh, here's let me tell you what things I would prepare for, like
right.
to look out for. What are some of those, what's a little cheat sheet on, hey, if you're going to be pulling claims or you think you might be disabled because of a mental health disorder, this is
Yeah.
you need to be prepared."
So the one thing I always tell everybody with a chronic illness is keep copies of your medical records. Because if you present at an ER or you're in a car accident somewhere, you need to be the one educating people around you. I have this chronic illness. These are the things that you need to look out for while you're treating me. Especially eating disorder patients who end up in the ER, they get treated very poorly, and people don't understand what they need. So I would say keep your medical records somewhere in the cloud is fine, but so that you have access to them. And then you have to be diligent about looking at the people who you're treating with. There are independent organizations who certify. There are certified eating disorder specialists. Find someone who has that. Um, You should also be looking for someone who's a dietitian, and looking for people who are also those dietitians can also be certified eating disorder specialists. And you got to keep good records. You got to hold on to everything. You can't throw it out. And if you get a denial, and it's important, you really should consult with someone and let someone, either a lawyer or there's a lot of advocacy groups out there to help you through it. Because you probably talked about this with Arissa. You got to get all your documents into the insurance company before you can sue. You got to get all your records in there. You got to have them all and get them all in there. And it's overwhelming. It is.
Well, actually, that was the advice from one ERISA attorney way back in the day who I just
Yeah.
had a consultation with, and she was very smart. But it was basically like, look, especially if this is going to be chronic, it might be years, months, I don't know, but you need to treat this like a freaking college dissertation. Like,
Mhm.
binders out, have the tab separators, show everyone you mean business when you show up to an appointment. If you have to go to the insurance company's doctor to see whether, you need
Right.
to show that you mean business. Because you know what? Maybe that day, this is what happened with me. I had to go to after already having 5 hand surgeons in 4
Mm.
different cities. Okay. So my evidence was overwhelming. But even after that, they tried to pull this bullshit on me. I appealed. They sent me to their doctor and their shady doctor. And, all the attorneys were like, oh, yeah, we know him, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. So and so. Yep, we got.
Right.
And so I walked in there with the attitude and with the evidence and a witness. And I was told, and I told my friend, I go, you go in there and it's poker face the whole time. I want you eavesdropping and I want you just staring ahead like you don't give a shits about anything, like just poker face. And so
Right.
she was great. She came in there. I came in with a huge binder. And listen, I said some real strong stuff about how I felt about this insurance company and what I was planning to do in the event that they didn't grant me this and how I planned on going to like investigative reporter and blah, blah. Long story short, you know what? That was probably the day he was like, yeah, we're going to let this one go. Right? I don't need the trouble. So
Right.
you got to be trouble. And part of that
Exactly.
trouble is showing that you mean business and you will take this to the ends of the earth and you will not let it go and you will be a problem. And I hate that because, see, people who know me and whatever, like, obviously, I've got that in me to do it. A lot of people don't.
Mhm.
And also, it is so stressful and
So exhausting.
it's
Yeah.
exhausting because it's such bad vibes and you don't want to be that guy, but like you have to be that guy. And it's awful. You've got to bully the bully, but you know what? That's what happens. So yeah, being prepared, having it all lined up, showing you mean business, you're professional about it, and even having a witness or an advocate with you in these scenarios is so helpful. And again, it's just, I know someone who's been on long-term disability for 10 years and they just, they're like, I just overwhelm the hell out of them with paperwork every single time.
Mhm.
Just overwhelm, just preempt, overwhelm. And it's a job. It's a part-time job, sometimes because they're gonna come around for people once a year or whatnot. But let's just talk eating disorder. I'm not sure if you know statistics on this or if there's anything interesting that we need to think about. Are more claims being approved now, more that there's more information about this versus like 1990? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think there are more claims being approved. I think, this used to be an only private pay industry, and now most of the providers do take insurance and more claims are being approved, especially with the Affordable Care Act and the Mental Health Parity Acts in both the states and federal. So it is better. I think the game that's being played right now is they'll approve you. Let's say you want to go into residential treatment, they'll approve you for the first 10 days or maybe, 15, and then they cut you off. Now, the interesting thing, I found this out in one of our class actions, is that they report to the insurance regulators. They don't report that as a denial because they approved if they deny in the middle of treatment. So all the statistics that you may find out there are skewed because they're now saying, oh, we let you go. We didn't let you go as long as you needed to, but we let you go and we consider that an approval, not a denial, which is very frustrating when you're
Okay,
trying.
let me just ask if I'm
Yeah.
getting this right. So let's say that's the scenario where they're like, okay, fine, here's 10, 15 days. And then they say,
Hmm.
sorry. They're saying that's not a denial because we already approved you, even though we denied you after 15 days, right? Is that what I'm getting
Right.
at? Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes my brain want to explode right
Yes.
now. So how how does the claim how are you able to even you can't how can you determine the amount of time, or do you have I would think the remedy is, and I know you're going to tell me, but my brain's going, all right, do I get my mental health doctor to say I need a minimum of 30 days? How does one know what they do need? Maybe it would be less. Do you get where I'm going here?
Sure, absolutely. And there's all kinds of evidence and advice out there about this. Um, it kind of goes back to, the all that research about how long does it take to change a habit? Not that this is a habit, but you're trying to rewire your brain. You're not just trying to say, white knuckle, eat it. You got to rewire your brain. How long does that take? It takes a while. They used to say when it was private pay that a good minimum stay for addiction was 90 days. You can hardly get that anymore. You can maybe get 30 if you're lucky.
If that's something you fight for when they say, fine, we approve 15 days and you go,
Yeah.
no, I disagree. I'm going to challenge it now.
No, what happens is your provider has to, and this is the other cost of doing business, your provider gets on the phone every time that is about to expire and advocates for you staying. Now, imagine how that interrupts your treatment. You're in treatment, you're really sick, you just got there, you're kind of getting used to what's going on, and you know that there's someone down the hall talking to your insurance company. If that insurance company says no, she's got the 2 more days we said, then what? If you don't have the money to pay, you're starting to pack up your stuff already. And it interrupts the whole flow of treatment. The other thing I say to parents, and when you say about what you should need to do, if you have a child or a loved one who has an eating disorder or any kind of chronic mental illness, you need to have money available. I don't care how you get it. If you have a credit card, if you
Yeah.
have a generous aunt or uncle, 'cause
Right.
you're going to have to bridge that gap, and sue later if you want to. But there's going to come a point where you're going to have to put some money down
So this
if
is
you
what's
want
scary
treatment.
about that is because we're talking about life or death in some of these
Yes,
scenarios, right? And so if they get denied and they're waiting for to go through the rigmarole of calling an attorney or fighting it, the insurance company knows that and they really don't care whether your kid dies or not. They really don't. In fact,
exactly.
one less person to pay out. So it's that grim, right? And so in that scenario, that's what you're saying. You need money for these gaps in times where because it's even harder for something
Yes.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing when parents call me, I say, gather your records and have money available. Because no matter how good I am or how good your insurance company is or how much we advocate, there's going to be a period of time where you're going to have to write a big check if you want your child to stay in treatment. And we know from the
And it's
research.
too elusive. Like I'm thinking
Mhm,
about a cancer situation where there's like blood records and like,
mhm.
the diagnostic, right? Here's the tumor, right? Like you can see it, right? The to insurance company, like that's quote better evidence, right? Than this elusive mental health thing. So even though those situations are life and death, it's probably, I'm assuming it's just better even with a physical thing, right? For them to at least approve it, not get caught in that, like we killed a guy, even though that can happen on appeal versus the mental health, because it's just too elusive and they could be like, well, we didn't think this. And there's no like tumor x-ray. Do you know what I mean? There's no
Exactly.
thing you
And you don't
determine.
know, especially as I said with bulimics. There are people
Right.
who've been bulimic for 20 years. And then, one of my clients, she was 15. She had bulimia for 7 months or 8 months. And she died. You don't know. Everybody's body is different. And so,
That's a good warning. Okay, so with the God, my thought will come back to me, and my mind's
yeah,
just going because there's so much good stuff in here. It's just,
I know.
ah,
Let me just bring it up another topic for you, which I think your listeners should be aware of. Um, we have been working very hard on trying to get rid of some of the reviewing doctors. And I thought I sort of had this because one of the biggest offenders, I have a old 1994 published decision from a federal court saying this doctor's basically incompetent. She didn't read the record. She got everything wrong. Whoops. She got the weight of the patient wrong. She got the admission. I mean, all of her facts were wrong. And yet I got another case a year later with the same reviewer. She's
Mm.
still working. And it is, you don't have much control, but I have had providers successfully say to insurance companies, we will not review with that doctor. They're
Mhm.
not competent. We will not review with them. We need someone who has the right credentials. And it works. It works when they're willing to say that. As a patient, you can say that too. I'm not willing to review with that doctor. They're not competent. But it's
Yeah. I remember so I had all of these hand surgeons, upper extremity specialists is like the
Mhm.
tagline for them. And the person that they sent me to challenge all of that was just an orthopedic surgeon,
Mm,
which not to say that they don't do those things, but they're not a specialist.
right.
You'd probably be hard to find a hand specialist out there who's done the extra mile to go that way, who's going to be shady. And it's a rare thing, right, to be just an upper extremity specialist versus an orthopedic surgeon. But they didn't even send me to someone. I let it go because I wanted it to be on record that that's what it was. So that
Right.
did go to it.
Right.
And also, I doubt they would have been able to find a hand surgeon. But that also just showed me a lot too. I was like, oh, they couldn't even find a hand surgeon. Like, not, of course they couldn't, you know?
So interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And we can debate over what a specialty is. When I argue in court, this is what I say to judges. I am a lawyer, but if you asked me to draft a will, I would be committing malpractice. I've never drafted a will. I don't know how to draft a will. So you've taken this psychiatrist and you say, oh, he's a psychiatrist. He's never seen anyone with an eating disorder. He hasn't seen any patients, say, for 5, 7 years. And when he was practicing, he was doing something totally different. He was doing, medical research or something like that. You can't tell me he's not committing malpractice. He can't give you an opinion just because he has the credentials
I
or an
mean,
opinion you should
it
try.
is in my opinion, all of that's malpractice. To say someone's not disabled when they are, because you
Yes,
want to get money or favor from your boss, who's the insurance company, or a perk, or a golf trip, whatever the hell it is, that's just malpractice. It's unethical, hands down. Yet you still have to fight it, even though
exactly.
obvious.
Yes,
It's so clear, isn't it? Yeah.
right, right.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is anything else you'd like to add about, you know I wanted to bring up,
Yeah,
do you remember this? Like, maybe it was 15, 20 years ago, there was an article because someone had a social media profile or a picture of them, like, smiling at a party and having fun, and then the insurance company said, "See, they're happy, they're not depressed."
exactly.
So this is do they still pull that stuff? And then if you do have a mental health issue, do you need to just shut down your social media and be careful of because not because it is legit, not because it actually means anything, but because you may have to fight a dumbass claim like that. Like, oh, we saw Elle wearing a backpack, therefore her arms work. No one said they didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, but you have to go do it anyway. So that's why it was like at a certain point, I got a PO box. I was like, I don't want to be followed with the stress. I don't want to have anxiety attacks. Um, and also just like I don't need to be fighting these bullshit moves. What about
Yeah.
that?
No, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, we tell all of our clients, we look at their social media with them and we say, you got to cut this out or that out. But I'll tell you something even that I've seen that's even worse. So you walk into your doctor's office, you're sitting on the table, you may be naked half the time, and they walk in and they say, "How are you, Lisa?" And you say, "I'm good." And they write down, "Lisa is good." I've seen a denial based on that. She said she's good. How could she need treatment? You have to be
Based on a
so
colloquial
careful.
greeting
Yeah.
response?
Yeah, just a greeting response. You have to be so careful in the
I
way you
say I'm good all the time, even if like someone just died and I'm just crying. I'm at the grocery store. If a stranger's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm good." I'm not going to tell the checkout person. Like,
exactly. But when you're in a doctor's office or, you know,
no, Glenn and Andrew mentioned this as a good point that because you're used to seeing the same doctor, because you're on the same meds or whatever the thing is, you need to still mention the symptoms you're having. Don't take it for granted that they already know. Complain
Exactly.
and complain each time, even though you're like, well, they know I've been complaining for 5 years about this. They should know this already. Well, they might. You need to just say it again, right?
Absolutely. And it's so true for mental health patients as well. Because look, we don't, and it's okay. We don't train our doctors to document for insurance coverage. We train them to document so they can help us. So they want to see a little bit of improvement. They want to see what the difference was. The problem is those records then get sent to the insurance company and they use them as ammunition against you. And they cherry pick whatever they can find in there.
Mhm.
And they say, look, on that day, she said she went to a birthday party that morning and had fun. Okay, well, then why does she need treatment? They'll pick out anything.
And if
Um,
by the way, if you're horrified and you're listening to this is really what happens. Okay. It is. I literally have, again, like she's wearing a backpack, her arms are fine. No, I'm wearing a backpack because at that time I was in such chronic pain, I couldn't even have something on one shoulder. Do you know what I mean? Because
mm,
first you have to kind of use your arm to kind of hold it again. You know what I'm saying? And so
yeah,
I could only wear a backpack and like had to fight that stupid thing. And then eventually, over the years, and again, now I think they're just sort of like, all right, we give up. But over the years before they kind of gave up, I mean, there were so many instances where I would write them and I'd actually had my doctor be like, she can do this, she can do that. I could throw a frisbee for 2 seconds at a barbecue. I could pick my nose. I wipe myself with my hands. I went through everything. I
wow,
pick my nose. I fucking like, I'm able to use them. I just can't use them to go back to my own. I can't use them 8 hours a day repetitively. That's
right,
policy. It's not whether or not I can use them at all. I'm fully mobile. I swim laps for my physical therapy for my arms, approved by doc. Like it's not
yeah,
about that, right? No one's claiming I can't use them, but they would try anything, even though it's not even of the language of my policy. So they've pulled all those moves on me before, but they will do it. And like Glenn and Andrew talked about, one of their clients who, was caught, quote, caught, effortlessly throwing a trash bag. And they claimed, well, the trash bag must have been 35 pounds average. And,
mhm,
and it was like a recycle thing that probably was a pound and it was empty bottles. They'll do anything. So you've got to be careful and just know that they are surveilling you. If you want to get away from that, you have to make the decisions to get away from that. And also that when they do, you're going to have to fight like really dumb stuff. And so
right,
I always tell people if you can preempt those things, that's what you want to do. You need to preempt that with going to your doctor because the insurance company is going to say this or whatever. Maybe not as applicable with mental health, but because, again, you could just get caught smiling like you may be forcing that smile. There's people that forge ahead through life depressed as hell, really
right.
struggling, and show up, and everyone's like, I had no idea. I mean, there's probably tons of people listening who have had someone who's committed suicide, and people were like, wait, what? That happened when I was growing up. The happiest, most popular, best looking kid, great family in our school, committed suicide one day. Like, do you know what I mean? And so
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
just proves that point.
It's interesting you raise suicide because this is probably one of the most difficult areas that I have to argue because insurance companies will say, well, is it if you have a passive suicidal ideation, that's not enough for us to protect you. You have to have a plan. And I mean, how crazy is that? That
Meaning you have had to have already committed? Give me.
you have to have a plan. Like when a doctor asks
Oh,
you, you say, "Oh, I'm going to take pills," or "I'm going to shoot myself," or "I'm going to drive my car into a river." If you're just vague about not wanting to live anymore, that's not enough. But the research shows that a lot of suicides are impulsive.
right.
That
It's not less planned. Like the fact that they think they need to find a letter in your computer to yourself that says, go to the store, get a rope, you're going to do it this way. Like,
yes,
what?
yes. I can't tell you how many letters or how many cases I've had where I've had to say, it doesn't matter that this 12-year-old doesn't know how she's going to kill herself. It matters that she doesn't want to live. And if
I
in an impulsive moment, she may do something and we need to protect her. It's so infuriating.
All right. And I don't know if there's anything you'd like to share in closing up, but I do want to say, and I said to Glenn and Andrew as well, which is you truly are the heroes because my blood is boiling over this. I've been a victim of it. I've had to fight insurance companies. That was a job for a couple of decades there. And so, um, thankfully, I'm not at that phase where it's, that's my life, but it was hell. And you guys are the heroes. I don't know how you confront what you do every day and hear the stories you do. I know you're able to sleep at night because you are helping them, but I'd also think it'd be like watching a horror show. So it's like you, cops, firemen, like all of you guys are just absolute heroes because what would we do without you, And
Mhm.
so
Thank
just
you. Well,
thank you so much for what you and your family have been doing for years for claimants all over California. And of course, Glenn said he can work in other states as well.
yeah.
Anything you'd like to, close out with before we go?
I just want to say to people out there, it's not you, it's the insurance companies. Don't make them
Yes.
make you crazy. There are people who understand and reach out, and don't make them feel like this is on you. You're entitled to help. They're supposed to be there for you, and it's not okay the way they treat you. It's just not okay.
Yeah. I remember one time, like 15, 20 years ago, I was going through something with the insurance company and I called my coach. And I was just because it's hard not to take it personally. It's really hard not to
Like,
take it personally when they keep calling you a liar or what you keep having
yes,
and you
yeah,
keep having to prove, and you're like, "How many times do you want me to prove this?" You know? And so and I remember he was being like, "You know what, Elle? Like, this is what they do. This is just it's not even personal. This is what they do. You can make judgments about their job or whether they're ethical people in life to do this as a job, etc., whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just like that's their job. This is what they do. It's not even personal. You're a freaking number.
right,
And technically you are just a statistic and a number for profit. So, but it's hard. It is hard to not take it personally. And that's why it's great when you can have a lawyer do the bullying for you. So
right.
if anyone needs help, cantorlaw.com, and that's
That,
K-A-N-T-O, sorry, .net.
yeah.
Sorry, K-A-N-T-O-R dot, sorry, cantorlaw.net, and that's Kantorlaw.net. Make sure we put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time and for all that you do. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. It was very interesting being with you. So thank you.
Have a great day. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, I would so appreciate you leaving a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about partner discounts on amazing products, visit ellruss.com/discounts.